Welcome to the first episode of the Raw Material Session by Session Breakdown series. The intention behind this series is to translate the enigmatic text into a more palatable format served for a wider audience, along with me adding insight where I can and pointing out some of the unrealized implications generated by the material. I highly recommend checking out my first video about the raw material. The video explains much of what will be covered in the intro as well, so you can look at this video paired with that one as twin sisters of a sort. However, both these videos barely scratch the surface at what the material has to offer, and they are already jam-packed with information, thus necessitating the need for a series which breaks every session down in as much depth as possible. So without further ado, let's jump right into our first episode. Despite becoming quite the popular spiritual philosophy online, the first sentence we are greeted with in the intro is, "This book is an exact transcript from tape recordings of 26 sessions of an experiment designed to communicate with an extraterrestrial being." So if you're completely new to the Law of One, I hope you have a better understanding of what it is exactly that you're getting into. Again, highly recommend checking out my first video on the subject. And while we're in the realm of disbelief, let it be known that the authors repeatedly mention that if something does not resonate with you, feel free to exercise your own discernment and to not let anything which feels erroneous serve as a stumbling block in your path. I feel that on this note, I want to address skepticism now at the beginning of all of this before diving into some of the more absurd claims the material has to offer. Truth without proof. The Law of One channelings are here to act as guideposts, something for your intuition to latch onto, and are not meant to be taken as gospel. Hell, there is no channeled material that is a complete 100% expression of reality, even if some come closer than others, and as the raw aliens say, knowing is not of this density. So given that you're basically required to use your judgment between accepting what's true and what isn't, let's move away from the notion that everything throughout the material is meant to be taken as fact. I also want to add I lived the majority of my life as a materialistic atheist, so rational thinking and critical thought towards unverifiable claims comes second nature to me. One of the reasons I'm bringing this up is because Vice recently released an article about the Law of One. At first I thought it was a hit piece, which nonetheless, I still wanted to address some of the criticism as it is indeed valid, but as I kept reading the article I realized the tone was more nuanced than what my first impressions indicated. So this is my preamble before properly covering the intro. Welcome to me addressing skepticism towards the Law of One. Thanks, Don. I often have an extreme tendency of being very reluctant towards introducing people and friends in my life to the raw material. It's not exactly a hobby that makes for easy conversation or relatable discussion. But those who do find interest in it and cross the trench of skepticism often feel gated from understanding the material due to its baffling lexicon of cosmic jargon. There are just so many outrageous concepts generated by the material, it's hard to properly bridge other people into what is actually being said, and wow, is this important. At first glance, it's much easier to siphon impressions of the material towards being incredulous with no basis in reality, instead of sitting with the concepts and actually understand what is being communicated. But before we get into this, I'd like to say my main point here is to discuss skeptical thought in the raw material, not just me ripping on this Vice article. However, it's time for me to start ripping on this Vice article. The article begins by stating the point I made in this video, speaking of how UFOs were not completely accepted as reality until David Fravor happened. Keep in mind it took nearly 70 years of speculation and constant sightings before the masses were allowed to believe in their existence without ridicule, and the raw material is 2 or 3 extension beyond UFOs. So take the disbelief in good stride, I suppose. They also centered the first paragraph of the article talking about the subreddit instead of any other waves of material as made, so the tone of the article makes quite a bit of sense, because making fun of Redditors is funny. The article brings a lot of self-awareness to Law of One believers, infusing their adopted spirituality with common language used to parody cultists and evangelicals, then bringing forward some of the more extraneous outcroppings of the material speaking of the likes of Bigfoot, Atlantis, and surviving the mass harvesting of souls. I won't defend the Bigfoot stuff, and I feel like the concept of harvest deserves its own video. The point here being it's very easy to dismiss a large body of data because there are a few outcroppings of outlandish information that don't sit well with consensus reality. But who cares about authentic journalism when you're being paid by how many clicks you get instead of the integrity of your story? I actually do want to bring a little bit of light into harvest, as the very title of the article is ripping on the concept. All harvest is, and I think it's a poor choice of vocabulary, but unfortunately what we're stuck with, is speaking about life after death, which is nothing new to any religion or spiritual practice found anywhere all over the world. Virtually every religion on the planet speaks of some type of afterlife, and if that doesn't satisfy you, go spend $2,000 in Journey to South America experiencing the Vine of the Dead for yourself, which is also closely associated with mystical thought and seemingly magical healing abilities. And if you're already familiar with the material or any system of religious thought found anywhere on the planet, the Law of One is more so a rehashing and clarification of what has been taught and handed down since the dawn of spiritual thought in general. The article then goes on to speak about the explosion of the subreddit, then making fun of its denizens, of which I have no interest to defend. I am unsure if the next few paragraphs that follow are attempting to satirize the material or not, because they basically describe the nature of the material in some eloquence even. I understand that it may seem ridiculous, but if you possess the full picture, perhaps these claims are not as crazy as they sound. But speaking of things being as crazy as they sound, we then move on to address the Benevolent Confederation of Planets and the Malevin Orion Group. This is a pretty central concept to the material, so I will do my best to explore its potential validity in some depth. I addressed the most obvious criticism of this claim in my first video on the subject matter, the main takeaways being the law of one's primal distortion is the law of free will. So if our Earth simulation thing is going to be done correctly, aliens can't just do a mass landing and be like, "What's up?" because that would break the first rule of the game. The law of one channelings say that they are the law of one channelings and not the law of one here's proof of aliens beyond any shadow of a doubt, because no one believes in channeled material besides stupid people. Except the Bible, because surely the mystical power to channel God only existed like 2,000 years ago and has no place in our modern world of science and reason. Anyways, it kind of follows a pattern of logic that we see here with life on Earth. The only beings that have achieved sentience, humans, seem to continually evolve and progress towards a unified state of things. First with a tribe, then with the village, followed by the civilization, later forming nation states, and now coalescing into a global society. There being a spiritually enlightened universal order following the same pattern of evolution isn't exactly far-fetched. Also, I want to briefly add some insight I had a while back regarding colonization. Colonization has historically sucked on Earth because of the swallowing of native culture and ideals, while the enforcement of the entities performing the colonizing beliefs and customs devour the native spirit. Colonization has rarely been well-intentioned, more so acting as a strategic grabbing of resources rather than an attempt to enlighten a more primitive peoples. Furthering this point, I feel it important that we describe the term angelic as the intention that respects the law of free will, and demonic as the energy that infringes it. Would you rather be an American under the guidance and protection of f***ing Joe Biden, or a denizen of infinity, where every single ounce of political thought has been scrutinized, tested, and polished until your loftiest dreams of a utopia have been realized tenfold? While this can only happen if you consent with your free will, because not doing that makes the colonizing party a demonic force, even if they have your best intentions in mind. Keep in mind that colonization can do plenty of good as well, sharing technology and philosophy with those who have not yet had the opportunity to discover it for themselves. Unfortunately, this is rarely the case. I hope you see the connection I'm making. It appears evident that we're being colonized by an interdimensional spiritually enlightened civilization, and the only thing in the way is a certain adherence to universal principles. I feel this adequately describes the Confederation of Planets meme for the time being, and we now move to understanding the Orion Empire. Also, I know it's of no importance, but why do we get a cool name like Confederation of Planets for the good guys, and Orion Empire for the bad ones? Why not something cooler like the Pact of the Dark Brotherhood, or Confederation of Planets in Disservice to the Infinite Creator? Perhaps Star Wars is a little too close to the truth. I feel the Hidden Hand AMA does a better job than I would discussing the reality of the Orion Empire. If you're unfamiliar with this AMA and interested in the Law of One, I highly recommend checking it out. At times, it does a better job explaining the Law of One than the raw material, and is probably the best singular source of information which accurately explains these concepts and then utilizes them in theory. If you really don't want to read this super long AMA on this sketchy website, I have recently created a read-through of the entire thing. Feel free to throw it on in the background while you do menial labor or play a video game or something. Just a heads up, I will be readily referring to this AMA and its counterpart throughout the series, so be prepared to grow familiar with it even if you don't care to check it out. Anyways, here is the quote I had in mind. In short, the Orion Empire are fourth density negative. They are lost in the sense that they have drifted so far from their true nature that despite many attempts, we have been unable to reach them and help them to develop. They exist within their group soul complex, mostly as a group of discarnate entities within the astral planes of the planets they visit. They have no intention of returning home, and instead seek to feed off of negative energy to keep themselves going, as they are disconnected from their inherent natural life force by refusing to abide by the Infinite Creator's incarnational principles. The time we spend between lives and time-space is intended to restore our soul energy from within, in order to continue our upward progression. They are essentially imprisoned within the fourth density negative cycle, as there is no negative harvest beyond the fourth density. So they spend their time traveling the galaxy, basically using the dark side of the force, negativity, to achieve their means. They will eventually be brought back before the One Infinite Creator and dissolved back into the intelligent infinity, source of all, though they are being given every chance for as long as possible to learn the error of their ways and return to seeking the positive, and to begin their journey back home. The main trouble is, they do not want to go home. They see themselves as being gods and do not intend to submit to the authority of the One. This may raise more questions than it answers, but that's part of the fun of immersing yourself in a reality where the Law of One is accepted as truth. However, before we move on, I want to briefly clarify this last sentence here to avoid confusion. The Law of One states that all is one unified creator, while the Orion entities desire the demonic distortion towards infringement of free will, which separates them from God to gods. This is being stated so edgier viewers don't get the idea that choosing the left-handed path grants them some type of power they wouldn't have otherwise. The only power you gain is knowledge of how to more effectively damn your soul. Oh, and one more thing before jumping back to the Vice article. The creators of this material were later constantly harassed by a 5th density Orion entity, of which the Hidden Hand AMA seems to contradict, but this appears to be more of a semantic issue than anything. My point here being that regularly engaging in the raw contact was very damaging, inevitably leading one of our authors to martyrdom. Anyone deeply familiar with the material is aware that there's no way this could all be a hoax, but this video is about diffusing skepticism, so here we are. The Vice article proceeds to misrepresent a ton of things, but does do a good job highlighting some parts of the material that may get looked over. Like, this is wrong, this is just saying he's dead and perhaps guiding one to question the mechanics behind the death process, and a vibration sound complex is a term the raw aliens use to refer to names, like mouth noises, for some reason. I've always assumed because they're trying to communicate their 6th dimensional reality to our 3rd dimensional one. You know, this complete sea of unitive vibration, because concepts like unity and vibration are necessary to understand the perceptual fluidity of time as afforded by higher dimensional existence, or something. This one is pretty much right, except not really. I don't know if it's better or worse, but they claim that the Great Pyramid was built with thought, but in a way that looked like it was built regularly to humans, because they didn't want to come off as miraculous builders of a pyramid, but also stated they apparated it into earth planes with golden bird bodies, so I don't know. I'm saying all this because it's really easy to debunk the material by picking apart the most incredulous edges while not understanding what the core is saying, or even what the edges are saying. They do get some of the insane shit somewhat right, however, and are clearly just finding zany passages for entertainment anyways, so whatever. The language is very difficult to grasp at first because understanding what's actually being communicated in a passage is a rung above what the typical Twitter-addled brain is capable of. The author did seem to deduce that the concept of dimensions are integral for a proper understanding of the material, in which case welcome to Physics 200. I want to clarify that the law of one is less so of an ideology and more so an attempt to explain an objective reality, which is not something easy to do in third-dimensional light. So, as the inner machinations of your mind form precepts into concepts, I would advise suspending disbelief and exercising an open mind as the laws of one funnel into your mind-body-spirit complex. Okay, and I'm not even mad about the Evangelion comparison because as someone who reads symbolism, an anime like Evangelion, which is heavily decorated with religious iconography and themes, it's of no surprise to find so many parallels from the show to the raw material. I might actually make a video on this very subject in the future. In any case, good job, Tamlin McGee. You were totally right. Embrace the goo. I really want to add that as various religions evolve throughout time and across the globe, finding a lot of similarities present between a wide variety of religions or mystical traditions, and noting similarities within the law of one channelings is perhaps not a coincidence. Maybe this law of one thing isn't another cultish religious ideal, but more like the stuff that religions are made of. Maybe you should have some respect to your country's mythos, with enlightenment found growing out of concrete and whizzing through the sky. Be grateful that there is a body of data discussing mystical phenomena in such a methodical way, because otherwise you'd be stuck with psychedelics existing and no foothold to properly explore the topic. Vice! Okay. Ideas of the apocalypse. Christianity is a doomsday religion, but I don't think they know that. Wait. Oh no. I think they hear us! Buddhism kind of being in too fine of a resonance here. This video. And now the logical outcome of humanity's selfish decision-making. Seriously, how did the Mayan calendar get its date so close to the potential of a nuclear holocaust? How did this article not mention 2012? Back to this article not knowing what it's talking about. It's more accurate to say that you exist on all planes of existence simultaneously, and choosing to be conscious of this enables one to do spiritual work. In terms of ascension, instead realize that you are the creator. You are likely subconsciously creating a reality which traps your creative essence within the third dimension, aka, get in loser, we're escaping samsara. Taking responsibility for your creation and properly integrating the knowledge of your eternal spirit within your day-to-day existence is what's being advertised here. Engaging within the higher dimensional work of balancing compassion and wisdom may just be your ticket to a more ideal reality. This is what happens when you only understand the gaseous manifestations of a concrete body of work and then make fun of it. You look stupid. You don't understand the material you are making fun of. You already are the higher being, just completely unconscious of your potential maturity. LNL research is still a thing to any viewer who finds themselves curious, releasing the occasional channeling and sometimes selling merch. One of the reasons I'm spending a lot of time with this article is because of the effort the author put into it, reaching out to various members of the LNL team like Gary Bean and Austin Bridges. They even talked to Jim for a while. That's also why I'm giving them so much shit. LNL Research has even been so kind as to remind Mr. McGee here that he is the creator, giving him the tools in which he could evolve spiritually. But why would you care about that when you've come across a story with spicy phrases like fringe new age Reddit UFO cult? Moving on to my favorite piece of arduous, well thought out skeptical thought, what if it's all just a hoax? Jim claims Carla was in trance saying words she didn't know beforehand. This doesn't really prove anything, so I'll do Jim a favor and give my own take on the subject. I feel like 106 sessions of speaking like this.
I am right. There may be said to be many aspects which another, a student, a mind, a note, and ponder in this image.
Is torture. This is completely unnecessary. I can't think of any other channeled material which talks like this.
I speak further than this for any student.
But let's assume she's reading off of a teleprompter, waiting 5 seconds between each word. Instead, let's jump to session 4, in which lies a passage that would probably go overlooked to the casual reader. I know I sure as hell did not pick up on what this was saying until I found this Reddit post making a 3D model of what the raw aliens were talking about. I am going to be reading this Reddit post pretty ad verbatim, so shout out to user IamWee. You are a madman for spotting this. We begin by inspecting passage 4.2 of the material, and we're being thrown into this with no context, so just understand that there has been some discussion regarding the raw aliens' involvement with Egypt and the pyramids. Now listen to this. If you will picture with me the side of the so-called pyramid shape and mentally imagine this triangle cut into 4 equal triangles, you will find the intersection of the triangle, which is at the first level on each of the 4 sides, forms a diamond in a plane which is horizontal. The middle of this plane is the appropriate place for the intersection of the energies streaming from the infinite dimensions and the mind-body-spirit complexes of various interwoven energy fields. Thus, it was designed that the one to be initiated would, by mind, be able to perceive and then channel this, shall we say, gateway to intelligent infinity. This, then, was the second point of designing this specific shape. Might as well be another ass pull out of that baffling lexicon of cosmic jargon. That is, until we actually investigate their claim. So let's imagine what the raw aliens are pointing out to us. What exactly is so special about the Triforce? Well, if we picture with Ra a 6-dimensional entity who would perceive all sides simultaneously, we get this. Okay, cool. Maybe the authors just had some knowledge of sacred geometry and is showing off. But wait until you learn that this diamond perfectly frames the Queen's chamber. What the f***? Keep in mind the scholarly opinion of the Queen's chamber is arguing whether or not if it was a place of burial.
Nope.
Have you heard of our Lord and Savior interdimensional initiation diamond theory? But let's take this a step further. Thanks to Robert Edward Grant Mathematics, the guy who recently discovered the pattern for prime numbers, we become aware of several encoded messages within the Great Pyramid. Virtually every mathematical constant is built into the pyramid, some of which have only been discovered within the past 150 years, along with latitude and longitude referencing the speed of light down to 1 meter tolerance. But that's probably just a coincidence. No mummy or corpse ever being found inside the pyramid, which kind of contradicts what most people think the Great Pyramid is. No hieroglyphs, and to top it all off with the burning mystery of how these things were built thousands of years ago with only copper tools. This kind of deserves its own separate video, but really the only rational explanation here is that the Great Pyramid was either built by aliens or some kind of advanced ancient civilization. Maybe we shouldn't be so critical towards claims of Atlantis. Anyways, gonna leave the pyramid talk with a quote from the Reddit author. I'm not sure how you would go about forging this in the 80s, but Carla Rueckert, the channel, and her associates would have needed either some very hidden occult knowledge and simply plugged it nonchalantly into the raw material, which is 1/10,000th of the information contained in the material, or they were legitimately accessing some sort of non-local information, whether it be an extraterrestrial intelligence or a sort of Akashic record. I really want to hammer in the point that we shouldn't believe every claim the raw material makes at face value, but more so providing some proof here that the authors were in fact accessing some type of non-local intelligence. So with that in mind, it's very unlikely that they just put together all this material and then recorded it, which would still be impressive and worth exploration in its own right. I could keep repeating myself that you can't take everything at face value and actually have to sit and investigate some of these claims in order to properly understand them, but I'm realizing I would rather just bash my head against a wall, so let's move on. Something I didn't know about the author until recently was their starring in the B movies. Further down this article, we are greeted with the sentence, "The information in this book is either nonsense or the most centrally important thing that you could possibly learn," restating the author's self-awareness about how absurd this body of work is, but also highlighting its potential importance. Just because this work has the potential to become a cult doesn't make the objective data any less important. The raw material is a very firm scientific exploration into mystical phenomena, which is of ever-increasing importance in the Western way of life. Skipping this next bit of how Redditors found God or whatever, I was surprised to find that this 1988 episode of Oprah featuring an interview with a woman who claims she can channel spirits didn't seem as bullshit as I initially expected. My intuition nudged me in the direction that she's actually doing something here, and not just a con artist seeking publicity.
A couple of moments are deadly on television. I take this to mean that this is Mafu. Adjusting to what?
Vibrational level.
Vibrational level. Tell me, Mafu, why, first of all, who are you?
My beloved woman, bless you, I am honored to be in what is called your presence. Ask you that which be I be that which you are, entity, all things. I be what is called one who hath come unto you on this day in your timing, to bring unto you the greatest thing there be, that which is termed the knowing, that you are loved by that which is called the Father, that is within you and within all things. There.
Where do you come from, and why do you have an accent?
That which is called where come from I, but within you, within this woman, within all peoples, I am one with your Father, that which you are. And why speak I in this mode? Because within what is called your New Age representation, it created enough controversy unto that which had already been, that needed to discharge what had come to create a following, and thereby to hold God, and unto what is termed the understanding of that which is termed they who seek wisdom through that which I am.
Penny may look dumb for channeling Mafu, but Oprah here looks even dumber for channeling the voice of 1988 American consensus reality. You can see how this channeling differed quite a bit from Carla's tuned trance telepathy. The most interesting thing here I felt was the acknowledgement of unitive consciousness and the ability to access non-local intelligence. Regardless of how poor the channeling may or may not be, noting the common themes between a wide variety of channel material surely lends one towards a more accurate picture of no. Oh wait. I forgot that every channeling throughout time and across the globe is a hoax, and there's no way this ability, which has been practiced for millennia, has any bearing on our understanding of the world. Surely this information has no importance towards our way of life. I kind of covered some of the challenges offered by the practice of channeling in my last video, and will probably further clarify the process in part 2 of the raw material session by session intro breakdown. We're then again introduced to the idea that the majority of this information is nothing new. Instead of the dated God and his order of angels, we now have the confederation of planets in service to the one infinite creator. Or according to the Etheria Society, interplanetary parliament. Many New Age channeling groups often repeat the same message just with different words, so it only makes sense that if channeling is a skill that can be improved with practice, maybe the raw material lends itself towards a higher degree of accuracy. Keep in mind that the authors had been practicing channeling for nearly 20 years at this point. As this article goes on, it seems to get slightly more honest, and since it's not really saying anything interesting, I have less of a reason to talk about it. Again, my intention with derailing our first intro vid here was to fairly address skepticism, and this article has proved to be a great ally. I have no ill intentions towards the author, and I imagine they learned more from the story than they initially expected. But anyways, here's a bunch of sciencey language to reinform you to not question the status quo, and instead keep believing exactly what you were told, also serving as a reminder that as long as it's not hurting you, there is no reason to care, because critical thinking and questioning your own lukewarm belief structures is out of the question. The nature of channeled messages is that which will always prove to be somewhat inaccurate, and with this being the case, it's essential to understand the cohesion behind the complex logic structures introduced by the material. Picking apart the extraneous manifestations instead of ever addressing the point is lazy skepticism and doesn't serve to actually debunk anything. Well, that was the Vice article. It may appear that I was a little critical of the article at times, and in truth, I am actually very grateful for its existence. Addressing surface-level criticism and skeptical thought before delving into the finer intricacies of the material is actually really important. I kind of figured I would have to break the intro into 2 parts, but I would have never guessed I literally would not have been able to make it past the first sentence. Briefly summarizing my first attempt at dealing with skepticism, we find the key takeaways being that the authors are actually accessing non-local information, that it's the same non-local information being accessed throughout time and across the globe, a proper debunking of the material is going to require a deep understanding of it, and finally, someone literally died to get this work in public circulation. If the material is not a hoax, then it is likely actually contact from an extraterrestrial race. It only follows that it's going to take quite a bit of work to actually understand what is being communicated.
Hey guys, Peter Griffin here. This is rueckert again, saying that you need to understand the material first before debunking it. Well, it's all for now. Catch you guys next time. I'm gonna go stick my penis into a washing machine.
The guides and resources properly exploring Ra's mysteries are few and far between, with our most bountiful analysis belonging to the work done by Aaron Abke, Scott Mandelker, and... Not to diminish their effort or anything, but personally they have not satisfied the alerts intuition brought to the table upon my discovery of the material. On that note, I only came across this tidbit of history while editing this video, so forgive me if this feels shoehorned in, but I couldn't bring myself to not mention it while focusing on a video discussing the material's credibility. Abrahamic religion makes up well over 50% of the world's spiritual practice, and the potential link to its roots digging deep enough to touch Ra's self-proclaimed first contact with Earth cannot be understated. The connection between Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, and the Ra material is significant, and to my knowledge has not been publicly investigated to anyone's satisfaction. But whatever, this is all just woo-woo spiritual new age garbage, and has no meaning to us educated modern intellectuals. This video may seem kind of off topic given how I hardly scratched the intro and instead talked about a Vice article for however long this video ends up being, but I am very happy with the end result. Many of the topics covered in this video are going to be essential for understanding what comes down the road later, and makes part 2 of this episode much easier to move through. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any insightful comments or questions about what's been covered today, feel free to leave it in the box underneath this video. It may even find its way into a future one. Thank you for watching. It's time to end the video, as I have another disappointing chapter of the Dragon Ball Super manga to read. See ya!